Today on the Topping Show, Matt Walsh responds to Donald Trump cracking down on DC's homelessness, UK police to arrest men for catcalling as they entrap them, DC police chief is unable to define what a chain of command is and has DEI trending, city-run grocery store shuts down after wasting millions of dollars in taxpayer funds, EPA says that trucks can lay off their DEF limp mode, Ford says it will build a modular EV for all platforms, and Ford also recalls more trucks, now being their 96th recall of the year. All of that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of the Topping Show is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, see, that's a joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, still giving away a free flamethrower with every IT purchase, with Picatinny rail adapters so you can mount it to any standard AR-15 like all awesome accessories can be. Go to toppingtechnologies.com and click the flamethrower button to learn more and see me shooting a flamethrower. And lastly, trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you can click that button and tell your friends, I would greatly appreciate it. Now going over to the business part podcast, you have Ford saying they're going to make one EV to rule them all, one to guide them, or one to bind them and in the darkness guide them. A terrible attempt at a Lord of the Rings reference, but I'm sure some will appreciate. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Andrew Collins at thedrive.com. And they say, quote, Ford says it will deliver the dreams of truly modular skateboard EVs. If Ford lives up to its promise of making electrical cars affordable and unique within the next few years, it'll be a welcome evolution for the EV industry, which, yeah, as Ford loses Ford loses about $5 billion per year on their EV division. They're only kept alive because of their gas vehicles, which people somehow still buy despite, again, a record number of recalls. But yeah, this is not a very original idea for the EV industry, but it would be revolutionary if they could actually execute this idea. Basically, and they summarize it more eloquently than I, and I'll go through that in a second here, though. It's an instance where, if you see on the picture there, you got the Ford vehicle on top. I believe that is a Ford Maverick. And under it, you got a skateboard. And just like as you would think, they would just swap out the skateboard for all the different types of vehicles, which would add to the slowness and boringness of all these vehicles as it becomes just software differentiating them in terms of the driving experience. But being a gearhead, obviously, I'm not their target audience. They want people who like disposable, expensive cars, also known as EVs. Now, diving into the article, again, credited to Andrew Collins at thedrive.com. He says, quote, we're about 15 years into an era of practical electric cars. Hold up, practical? No, they're still disposable. Still take a while to charge. There is supercharging. But yeah, I wouldn't say we're in an era of practical EV ownership. If you live in a shitty, and I pronounce that on purpose, or rather mispronounce it on purpose as a slight to those areas, maybe, but nevertheless, I'll get back to his article. He says, quote, for much of that time, we've been hearing about the potential of the skateboard chassis, the EV that can do everything. Just drop it on top of any structural battery deck. But so far, no automaker has really run with this efficiency to crank out dramatically different cars from one platform. Ford, however, might finally deliver. Ford shared plans to radically change the way it assembles cars. Not only is the Blue Oval planning on expanding its EV offerings, geez Louise, shareholders are going to love that. We lose $5 billion per year. Let's keep doing that. But it's also positioning itself to make them more affordable and diverse. The $30,000 electric truck announcement caught our attention as car enthusiasts. You just say car enthusiasts like electric trucks? I don't know about that. But really, the Ford Universal EV Platform and Ford Universal EV Production System are a much bigger deal for the industry. By building cars in 3 parallel processes, the skateboard chassis, the front, and the rear, Ford can theoretically build basically anything from trucks to sedans to sports cars and vans in the same facility using the same structural belly. The company's goal is to cut production costs and increase margins. They need it. But it could also represent a huge opportunity for choice on the consumer at the end of the deal. Yeah, I don't think so. Again, EVs are like cell phones, disposable, expensive, and even worse because only one person can fix it, Ford. So, yeah, consumer choice, I think not. You have the illusion of choice by getting one of these disposable pieces of junk, in my opinion. Now, they say, quote, it was a particularly interesting development to learn about since it was only about 3 months ago Ford reportedly scrapped its next-gen zonal electric architecture ideas for for ICE cars and EVs pivoting to cultivating existing systems. Essentially, the company decided that by integrating some aspects of its canceled FNV4 network architecture vehicle, like modular software and central control panel, into its existing architecture, Ford figured it could still offer things like over-the-air updates without quite so much money as it would need to build out an all-new zonal system from scratch. I guess compromise was achieved because the big bragging point from Ford's announcement was about electric car architecture commitments. For instance, the wiring harness in the new midsize truck, it will be more than 4,000 feet shorter and 10 kilograms lighter than the ones used in the first generation electric SUV, which will surely disappoint the that's basically crackheads, drug users who want to use these for scrap materials. Now, they say, quote, if Ford lives up to the Universal EV production system promises, then the Ford Universal EV platform has a great chance of delivering on the dream of having a super diverse vehicular lineup on one skateboard. In other words, Ford may have found the optimal zone architecture solution for legacy automakers. Right. Now, obviously, platform sharing has been around forever. There are plenty of disparate gas cars based on sharing underpins. Ford's not the first to offer to build different EVs on one shared platform either. Volkswagen Group's MEB platform is one such example already in production. Volkswagen spent a lot of resources trying to figure out zonal architecture too before deciding to just buy it from Rivian. But that's not exactly why I think Ford may do it better than VW. Despite regularly leading the industry in recalls and killing its entire sedan and subcompact lineup, Ford knows how to have fun. Look at the many Raptors there are, Mustang variants like the GTT, funky tremor trims on work trucks and large and small, while Volkswagen is laying one egg-shaped vehicle after another. Further proof this author is inebriated. Volkswagen Group, or VAG, Volkswagen Auto Group, which is their acronym, not making that up, Volkswagen also makes, Lamborghini, Bugatti, Ducati, Porsche. Again, I love the Ford Mustang, the real one with the stick shift and a V8. That's awesome. But yeah, saying that, Volkswagen is boring. Again, they make the fun GTI. Granted, it's automatic only, so that is boring. But yeah, in terms of which company is making more great things for the consumer, again, Volkswagen is having less recalls. Well, everyone is compared to Ford. But yeah, Ford claims it has a magical formula. Now, we'll see. Again, this is not an original idea. It would, if properly executed, it would cut costs dramatically. I would also make the argument that it would be a soulless driving experience. But again, most consumers are not gearheads. They just want to get to the grocery store and to their job and go back home. They don't care that there's only two pedals, also known as an automatic transmission, which I find abhorrent. But yeah, the real question is, do you think, and again, not financial advice, do you think Ford has a resource allocation, the engineering team, and the execution skills to take this idea and really roll it out in mass without recalls and without and be able to do it profitable? Again, a lot of companies lose money for years when it comes to research development, putting out a new product. That's pretty common. Amazon historically, famously lost money for over a decade, I believe. But Ford, again, how many years is this? Is it half a decade already? Every year they lose between, they started losing, what was it, 4.8 billion. Last year was 5 billion. Projected 5.2 billion lost this year on EVs. Again, the market, the biggest, fastest growing segment of the market, though I'm not a fan, is hybrids. That's where Toyota read the room properly, and they put a lot of money in research and development into hybrid technologies. And it makes sense, because that's where a lot of consumers are going. Maybe Ford thinks this is the ultra future, and this will be the sure bet to win. But again, it feels like a pipe dream. Everyone's had this idea ever since the EV came out. I understand conceptually it'll be revolutionary, but I'm so skeptical that Ford can do this. Maybe they think this is their Hail Mary to take the company to the next level. But yeah, it's interesting that Ford wants to go down this road. And again, yes, they did cancel their 3-row EV SUV, which I don't blame Ford too much on that, because most other companies have in terms of the large EV SUVs. And also, the consumers aren't buying those anytime soon. Especially, thank God, the government rolling back some regulations in the in the U.S. automotive industry. So I'm pretty skeptical it's going to work out. But let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Now, going over to the Cultural Report podcast, and Matt Walsh reacting to Donald Trump and the administration cracking down on DC homelessness. Now, this is Matt Walsh responding to someone by the name of, well, I try to keep this moderately family friendly, but her name is in fact Hustle Bitch, which pretty apt in terms of description. You know exactly what she does. She is I guess a picture of a guy, but he does hustle apparently. And I'll read Matt Walsh's response in a second here, but it's about a minute long here. And this is a White House press secretary.
The Metropolitan Police Department, with the support of the new federal agencies who have been surging on the streets of the District of Columbia, are going to enforce the laws that are already on the books here in Washington, D.C. For far too long, these laws have been completely ignored, and the homelessness problem has ravaged the city. So D.C. Code 22-1307 and D.C. Municipal Regulation 24-100 give the Metropolitan Police Department the authority to take action when it comes to homeless encampments. So homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. Again, these are pre-existing laws that are already on the books. They have not been enforced, which is part of the reason for this federalizing of the National Guard to bring in this assistance for law enforcement. While we are targeting criminals and trying to remove criminals off of the streets, we also want to make DC safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals and homeless encampments as well. So we will be using these regulations and code that already exists to clean up our streets.
Maybe someday in our life, DC will be hospitable. You may actually be able to go there and have a better experience than going to San Francisco, which is the crap capital or crap city of the world. And Matt Walsh responded. Matt Walsh said, quote, "Wow, so they won't let cracked out vagrants set up campsites and drug dens in the middle of the sidewalk. They want DC to be an actual civilized community and not a refugee camp with mentally ill drug addicts shitting in the street. Wow, this is so horrible. Wow, I'm so shocked." And he got about 750,000 views and 25,000 likes, which, yeah, a lot of these laws are on the books. I would actually argue that Trump should maybe go a step further and try to, clean up these shitties, which I purposely mispronounce as a slight to what they all represent, in terms of usually being leftist hellholes governed by morons. And yeah, DC, it should be, representative of our country. It's not. But in terms of global news, a lot of people look to that shitty, I'm sorry, and it's just a hellhole. The police don't do their jobs, which again, look at who runs a lot of the cities, leftists. A lot of them just follow orders mindlessly, soullessly, to whatever the chiefs of police say and whatever the mayor says, and whatever the government says in terms of, let's just not enforce the law. That's why San Francisco is one of the worst places on the planet. I call it a shitty place. I'm not joking. There's so much human defecate on the ground. They invented an app to try to, have people avoid those areas of the town or city. And yeah, there's so much that the whole city was just brown on the app because it was all crap. Because again, it's just lawlessness. Police just do nothing. Which, talk about an easy job, get paid to sit around and, presumably they have police in San Francisco. Yeah, I can't believe they just sit around all day with all the theft, crime, and drugs. But go to the comments. Perhaps I'm alone in this assessment. Maybe, everyone's really upset that DC might be clean for once. The conservative alternative says, quote, "I just checked the Constitution and it doesn't say anything about the right to sleep on sidewalks." Gave 100 likes. True. Someone by the name of Exposed Big Pharma. Oh, I was about to say, I already gave them a follow. He has a picture of a liberal white woman and says, quote, "Defund the police, Black Lives Matter." And then it's a cartoon, a black guy in a hoodie comes up and punches her in the face, getting 44 likes, which, yeah, it's quite interestingly ironic the way liberal white women vote when it comes to, especially Islam and other religions that want to clothe them up when most of them are trying not to wear any clothing, which, again, if you're a leftist, I don't blame them. Usually they are as big as a Hummer, and the amount of clothing they would need to cover them would be quite expensive. It's usually the size of a small Hummer or perhaps a mini little car or smart car. We also have Mr. Reality saying, quote, "Good, sick of the shit. Americans deserve a decent place to live, and having a bunch of strung out vagrants prevent that." Getting 114 likes. 115, 117 likes, going up like a stock. ENW Conservative says, quote, "Odd that the POTUS doesn't want the DC to become a shithole that's Seattle." Getting 94 likes, which, yeah, that's a communist hellhole. I had some friends escape the shitty of Seattle. Oh, it's awful. It blows my mind that companies are wasting money living there. Well, actually, they lost about 10% of those businesses. They lost about 10% of the revenue from businesses that used to be headquartered there in 2024. A lot of those businesses are starting to leave because they see them being taxed more and getting very little any benefit. We also have Musa saying, quote, "Rural white Americans are the most," he says, quote, "Rural white Americans are the most drug addicted people on the earth." Getting 34 likes. In a contrarian statement, he got 45 responses. Wait, not quite articulate, he is. He is, to say, quite, not a better term for that, quite effective at engagement farming. Crackles McTaco says, you're just wrong, getting 4 likes. Titius Polio says, quote, you think we're doing this by race because that's how you like to see it's done. We want everyone living their lives that way to be removed, getting 16 likes. Well, there was not ratioed. Let's see here. Harley Smith responded saying, quote, if all mental illness were cured, there would be no Democrats, getting 12 likes. Going back to the main comment section, Bajorn says, quote, when did allowing people to live on the streets become the humane option? For all the money that California has been throwing at it with needle exchange, it's only become worse, even though they want us to believe to the contrary. People are just anti anything that Trump is pro for, question mark, in 24 likes, which, yeah, if Trump were to say, I think water is delicious, it's the greatest thing for you, it hydrates you, I'm sure there'd be some leftists that go on water strikes and just stop drinking it altogether. But I think they already have, because I'm pretty sure they just drink high fructose corn syrup in cans, but that's just me. Okay, Watkins says, quote, an American where men cannot, in public place, lie passed out, semi-nude in the puddle of his own vomit and excrement is not the kind of America I want to live in. Getting 34 likes. Let's see. Someone said, was there a typo there? And he says, no, the land of the free, home of the passed out junkies, getting 3 likes. I think he's probably sarcastic. Let's see. You also have Dennis the Menace saying, quote, I agree with the statement. Mental health is a big issue. Help build them up, getting 10 likes. Moronic headline says, why do Democrats try to make half the country believe that your cities are safe because half the country is stupid? Getting 14 likes, which, yeah, I don't think anyone with a modicum of intelligence would ever say that cities are a safe place to live. They aren't. They're literally the worst. And I'm saying that like a leftist, like, oh, it's literally the worst. No, statistically speaking, that's where most of the drugs, most of the crime, most of the lawlessness is in high-density cities, or as I call them, shitties, because, well, they are usually also covered in excrement, like San Francisco. And I think this is a great thing. And it is a cliche, but yeah, mental health is important. I think most of the people are homeless. It's not because they can't afford a house. That's kind of the cliche Democrats say, just give them a house, they'll be fine. No, I mean, absolutely not. Most people, again, not all, but most people who are homeless have mental health issues. They need some help more than just giving them a place to stay. It'll be interesting to see if Trump actually does something extra, like open up mental health asylums, which I suppose some people would say is a pejorative term, so maybe just mental health centers or, stay houses where they actually get counseling, which Lord knows I'm not a big fan of psychiatrists or anything, but there are some people who do need a little extra help when it comes to, obviously being homeless. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of the day if DC actually gets cleaned up to the point where it's livable. But let me know your thoughts, because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting cultural news, you have the UK to arrest men for cat calls and trying to entrap them. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Colin Rugg, and he says, quote, report, female UK police officers are going undercover by dressing in tight clothes to elicit cat calls from men so they can arrest them, according to the Telegraph. The Surrey Police Department is proud to announce that multiple men have been arrested for harassment. The females are reportedly pretending to be joggers to catch men catcalling them. Ooh, I'm sorry, I should put a visual disclaimer. This is one of those UK police officers who, as youth would say, she looks mid. Also to say, not that attractive. But let's see what she has to say in the weak, conquered place that is the UK.
For people to recognise that it's not right, it's not just a small act, it's a thing that can make someone feel really quite uncomfortable. So I think it's important, police are taking it so serious. It's one of our force priorities. And for me, that...
Not preventing women from being physically assaulted, that's okay, and actually happening at a disproportionate rate between immigrants.
Makes me feel proud to work for Surrey Police, because for me it's such a personal experience, and I know for a lot of other, if not all other women who experience it. So I feel empowered to be a part of such an operation.
These women aren't friends out for a run, they're actually undercover police officers taking to the streets in Surrey as part of a new operation trying to stop people catcalling and harassing female runners.
We get honked at, the staring, the hanging out of the window just to look at us, and it's so prevalent.
And police teams are ready to intervene the moment the officers are beeped at, followed or shouted at, pulling people over.
Those kind of behaviours may not be criminal offences in themselves, but they still need to be addressed. And of course, the people that are likely to commit those kind of behaviours, they may then go on to commit more serious offences or more serious behaviours.
A friendly daily reminder that the UK is a weak, conquered, pathetic area of the world. I would even call them a country that is so pathetic. And I think it's also having to do with importing a lot of people and not having the infrastructure, make sure they similar to your culture. Her face is not attractive either. And I don't have much ground to stand on. You're seeing me right now, or maybe just listening on the Spotify or the Apple podcast. And this went pretty popular, pretty viral. Got 1.9 million views, as well as 10,000 likes. Which, again, if anyone ever says, why do Americans love your gun so much? Because we don't want to become weak, conquered, and neutered like the civilians on pretty much every other country on the planet. Again, the UK civilians, they become so pathetically knocked down that they literally have gotten to the point where you get arrested for memes, or memes as I call them in the UK. And the UK is such a weak, conquered, pathetic country, and their priorities are so perversely, disgustingly misplaced. The authorities actually punish you more for making a meme about assault than the women who are victims of assault. Again, at a disproportionately high rate because of the illegals that are there. And yeah, this is where they're spending police resource allocation, setting up sting operations for guys catcalling a gal who's jogging. Who, again, she's a mid at best. That's what the UK the police are prioritizing over there. Not the people who are physically being assaulted, not the people who are being taken advantage of the worst possible way. But no. They're worried about catcalls in the UK. Which, yeah. Thank God we have the Second Amendment and the First Amendment, which, although you could argue the First Amendment is guaranteed by the Second Amendment, of course. Now, going to the comments section, one of the first ones comes to us thanks to Muscular Sack. He says, quote, Honeypot Central, very scummy of the UK. They won't arrest a Muslim for trying to keep this moderately family friendly. They won't arrest a Muslim for taking advantage of a woman in the most worst possible way, but for Brit, they will arrest them for catcalling them. Getting 8.3 thousand likes. Colin Ruggs responded to say, quote, the UK is a total mess. What an embarrassment it's become, getting 4.1 thousand likes. With all these comments, I don't think there's a possible way for me to keep this family friendly, so just cover your ears if you have children listening. Wall Street Maverick says, quote, they won't arrest Muslim men for grooming or Muslim grooming gangs that take advantage of British white girls, but they will arrest Englishmen who make comments while they jog in the police entrapment scheme, getting 3.4 thousand likes. Colin Mark says, gotta bust those evil Englishmen who are whistling at women, getting 905 likes. Proud Girl Dad said, this is a crazy thing to go to jail for, getting 1.7 thousand likes. Colin Rock says, the thugs who are going undercover for this are the ones who should be thrown in jail, getting 1.6 thousand likes. Valentina Gomez says, quote, they pull this crap while they free all the rapist Muslim terrorists in the UK, getting 2.1 thousand likes. Based Electrician, one of my favorite commentators, he says, quote, what are they going to do about the full-blown depression they cause when the Instagram generation of girls can't understand why they no longer get catcalled? He also has some screenshots of her looking, ugh. It looks slightly better in that picture, but only slightly. I got 80 likes, which, yeah, we're seeing that in the United States in terms of women going online and complaining that no one like randomly gives them compliments anymore, or that men don't randomly come up and approach them anymore. I mean, again, it's been years of being reinforcement of men getting sued and put in jail improperly because of false accusations. And I mean, the backlash is so severe, guys see no upside to, approaching women in the United States these days for the most part. There's a high risk you could lose everything just by simple misinterpretation. So a lot of guys are saying, the odds are so stacked against me. Why play the game? Can't blame them. Sal Goldman says, quote, this makes sense. How else can they raise the white sex offense numbers so foreigners don't look like dangerous and increase by statistics? Getting 750 likes. Interesting theory. Team Deplorables says, quote, you can't catcall women in the UK, but if you're Muslim, you can go groom groups of 13-year-old girls and sell their bodies to other Muslims for drugs. Getting 1.5 thousand likes. All diversities are equal, I'm told. Yeah, obviously not. If your culture is abusing children, yeah, you probably need to change that culture a little bit. Singularity Books says, quote, just boosting numbers of fake sex crimes while real brutal ones go entirely almost unpunished in the UK, getting 885 likes, which, yeah, that is one way to pad the statistics. That might be why they're doing this. One of the only useful things I learned in college, not a lot of useful things, but a business professor or business statistics professor once told us one of the most important things about studies is always know your sample size and know your sample, because you can easily manipulate that to get the outcome you want. That is especially true in politics, as we see not just in the U.S., but across the pond. We also have Kevin Smith saying, quote, I'm sure they will do it in the quote unquote diverse neighborhoods. Haha, I'm only kidding. We all know they only wanted to arrest native-born Brits, getting 414 likes. Mountaineer 86 has a picture of a German World War II soldier, as well as a juxtaposition with a picture of a modern, weak UK police officer. Says, I'm just following orders, getting 482 likes. Let's see. Sergian's Britain says, quote, you just know they are 100% targeting working class white men and not the blacks or Arabs, getting 490 likes. Mateo says, quote, can we arrest females that show their ass crack by wearing tight clothes, getting 104 likes? Just Posting L says, they couldn't find an attractive one, getting 150 likes. Which, again, she might get some people to catcall her, but surely they must be greatly inebriated by the booze that they serve in the UK. Harry Heller says, just in case there's anyone left who takes them seriously. And you have UK police. I was going to try to keep this moderately family friendly. I was trying, folks. They have UK police holding leashes of adults dressed up as dogs. Yeah, I think that might be a good note to go off on in terms of perfectly encapsulating how weak, pathetic, and weird the culture is in the UK. That did get, again, 351 likes. But we'll see if this spreads across the globe like a virus, as we've seen with other similar censorship laws, as well as entrapments in the globe. But as if you needed yet another reason not to visit the UK. And again, I'm not saying, obviously, you shouldn't catcall a gal. You shouldn't. I don't. Again, especially these days. But again, we have the freedom of speech. Now, again, I don't recommend it. But yeah, we'll see how this spreads. But let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Going over to the political part of the podcast, you have a DC police saying, well, actually, wait, what's a chain of command? As she doesn't know what chain of command means. This is the chief of police. And it caused a lot of backlash in terms of a lot of people calling out DEI. Now, this brought to us thanks to End Wokeness. And he says, quote, DC's police chief Smith doesn't know what chain of command means. This is hilarious. We'll watch now.
That's what the chain of command is now?
What does that mean?
Well, is it...
It's like me not knowing what YouTube or Rumble means. Big part of the job. It's like me not knowing what a computer is or a firewall is, and I work in tech. Like basic terms you learn day one. Let's rewind. This is too funny. This is actually credited to also Fox News, which is somehow still in business.
That's what the chain of command is now?
What does that mean?
Well, is it Pam Bondi speaking to the mayor, speaking to you, or how does this work?
So at the executive order...
So now the police chief stepped aside in shame. Look at that body language. Weak, pathetic, awkward. Which, actually, shame is a rare thing in politics. I'm surprised she isn't just barking back. What do you mean chain of command? I am the chain of command, or some cliche like that.
Speaking to you, or how does this work?
So
now this is an assistant coming up.
the executive order is clear. The president has requested MPD services, and our home rule charter outlines the process. The president designated Attorney General Bondi as his proxy to request services through me.
Now, this has DEI trending because the police chief is a strong African-American woman, kind of cliche to say, but short hair and glasses. Which, again, I can't critique too much when it comes to looks because I have my face. And also need to get a haircut one of these days when I have free time, which is a rare thing when you work a couple jobs. And this went very viral. Got 1.1 million views and 5.9 thousand likes. And most people are critiquing her because they're guessing, wait, why do you get the job? Or how do you get the job? You don't know what the chain of command is. It's almost like an average police officer not knowing what handcuffs are. Or not knowing... pretty much every job, you could argue every job has a chain of command, unless you're a sole proprietor. Like, everyone has a boss. Every company has a structure. Like, everything has a chain of command. Now, granted, that term is especially prevalent in, military and police and those types of environments especially. But yeah, non-normative change. You can't make this up. But I bet she'll probably just she'll get no negative ramifications. She's not going to get a paid time off. No. And again, it's not like illegal for her not to know the basic functions of her job. Just hilarious, sympathetic. Now, one of the first comments comes to us thanks to Trump Tracker, and we're getting a contrarian term right off the bat, which again, I want to echo chambers get a little bit boring, so I personally try to follow people on the left, on the right, libertarian. Now, Trump Tracker says, quote, Trump didn't know what Alaska was part of the United States. Do you share that clip too? Now, he got 8 likes and 43 replies. First one comes from 50 Cent. I don't think it's a real one unless he has a lot of time in his hands. He says, your bio is missing the Ukrainian flag, the blue wave, and the mask face emoji, getting 48 likes. So he was, in fact, ratioed. X says, you're not too bright, are you? Getting 5 likes. Baby says, but Trump, you win a prize. Congrats, getting 13 likes. Hot Onion Juice says, you're Estonian, right? Getting 6 likes. Luciaro says, quote, that is called a red herring, an absolute pathetic logical fallacy, only used by morons and people who are losing, getting 11 likes. Going back to the main comment section, you have David Santa Clara says, quote, he says, we ain't going back in chains, honey, and it's Squidward from the SpongeBob with lipstick, big eyelashes, and big fake nails, getting 483 likes. The conservative alternative says, quote, for those of you wondering, yes, she's a DEI hire. And he has a news article clipping from... Apologies, I see it's credited to Lau Dolga, but I don't see the actual publication. The article says, quote, new DC police chief pledges fair and equal treatment for LGBTQ community. There's a picture of her. Getting 196 likes. Base Electrician says, he makes up a quote for her and has a screenshot of her. And he says, quote, I believe that chain of command is an old wooden ship that was used in the Civil War era. You're getting 52 likes. Paul Zupa says, quote, that's why crime is terrible in DC, getting 43 likes. Vomit Robney says, quote, a massive collection of retards run these departments, getting 170 likes. Emily says, how did she even get her job, getting 83 likes? Which, I mean, again, a lot of these jobs, people in the area vote for them in mass. The people in shitties, again, I pejoratively mispronounced that term, people overwhelmingly vote for the people in power over there. There are some appointed, of course, but yeah, I mean, you get what you vote for. You also have fake Leon Musk saying, quote, is this caused by DEI or not something else, getting 157 likes. Amelia Henderson, which I think I follow already. I am now, because she's a pretty good commenter. Now she says, quote, when your police chief has to ask what the chain of command is, the city's actually screwed. DC's crime problem starts right from the top, getting 133 likes. I mean, this comes a couple months after the fire chiefs in California, who, again, were all very strong, diverse hires, all women, all African-American obese women, get their names, but they all have the same name too, which is statistically impossible. And I have a cliche name for a first name too. But yeah, they forgot you need water in the reservoirs to fight fire. Yeah. Sarah Rose says she probably thinks he's asking about slavery, getting 345 likes. You also have Nick's Dank Memes, who A+ for marketing. He did in fact respond in meme form. He says, quote, is the entire department made up of DEI halfwits? You have the famous Trojan horse meme. The Trojan horse is labeled DEI. Inside the Trojan horse is the deliberate destruction of every institution through incompetence. And the person employing the Trojan horse is labeled commie politicians. And the people opening the door for the horse are labeled liberal retards, getting 115 likes. Sergio Tajaya says, quote, what does that mean? Sums it up perfectly. Clueless, ignorant, DEI, moronic idiots, getting 109 likes. Is there any more contrarian statements? I don't think so. Let's see. Oh. The guy from H5 says, next up, a few words from the police chief of crime, Marin City Mayor. It's middle-aged lesbian again. What the F are we doing anymore, man? Getting 96 likes. Which, yeah, a lot of people are voting for that. So, and again, it's not, illegal. There's a random other, this is kind of funny. Hakis from Underground has a picture of a guy. I don't know, he might be a famous comedian. I have no idea who he is. But there's a guy, it looks like he's on a podcast, and he makes up the quote going, chain of command, the rapper, getting 34 likes. So, yeah, more hilariousness of people in charge not knowing a basic term, which is, again, it's so comical. Like, it would be like a car mechanic not knowing what an engine is, or transmission, or tires. Tires, what are those? and having someone else go in, oh, those are actually the round things on the vehicle that enable the vehicle to go forward or backward, or sometimes, it could turn a little bit too. So more hilarious incompetence from politicians, or in this case, police leadership. And we'll see if anything changes with DC as they try to crack down on crime. It will be interesting to see if the DC police, if they actually have the men on the ground and then the streets actually enforce it or not. But let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting political news, you have a city-run grocery store. Well, it shuts down after they waste $18 million from the taxpayers. Now, this is brought to us thanks to End Wokeness. He says, quote, breaking, the city-run grocery store in Kansas City shuts down due to rampant theft, barren shelves, and more. The city spent $18 million to keep it open. What a waste of taxpayer funds. Without too much further ado, this is somehow credited to Fox 4, which again, I don't know how Fox is in business. Like 5 people watch them, I think, maybe 6.
I don't understand. We need this store.
This is dark, maybe dark humor, funny. I don't understand. Don't you? Spoiler alert, theft and incompetence.
We do.
Alicia Batson shopped here on Monday and was going to come back here for groceries today. As soon as our interview was done, she started to cry. Part of the reason why she was so emotional may be because of what she told us in the first 30 seconds of our conversation.
What are we supposed to do as a community? Where am I going to go now? Where am I going to go get stuff for my kids?
I'm sorry, dark humor. I have an idea. What is our? Let me just. I don't want to take anything in context. What did she precisely say?
What are we supposed to do as a community? Where am I?
Stop stealing. Again, this is not unique to. Again, there's a lot of communities of theft. It's an instance where there's one reason why a business shuts down anywhere, because they lose money. It's not financially viable. Again, we see a lot of people critique these companies saying that they're evil. I think there was a brief protest by some hilariously obese people when Kroger tried to pull out a city or when they shut down a store. And to Kroger's credit, they actually hit, well, not too much credit. I'm not a great fan, but they let them know they just couldn't afford it. Again, grocery stores, the industry average for profit on groceries is 2%. I mean, Walmart makes a 1.6% every fiscal quarter. Not financial advice. It is the worst industry out there. There's a reason. You look what the businesses in 2025. What are the startups? Cybersecurity, some consumer goods, yeah. Let's see. What else is out there? Some accessories, knickknacks, electronics. Maybe some, but what's not? Grocery stores. No one starts a business in the grocery store industry. Pretty much every grocery store you see expanding right now has been around for 50 years plus. And it's because no investor would ever say, I'm going to invest in a business that has less than 2% profit margin and is highly competitive. A lot of people see most of the groceries as commodities that they can buy anywhere. There's not a lot of loyalty to a grocery store. People usually shop based on a price point. Or if you're rich and you have a lot of money, you go to Target, which to me is just silly waste of money because it's the same thing as Walmart, but more expensive. But nevertheless, I know they have some unique brands, yada, yada, yada. You're saying, why are they going away? Because they can't afford to. Even Walmart, who to their credit or critique, they had stores on the south side of Chicago for 17 years that never made a profit once. Not one time, because theft was so rampant. And Walmart finally came to their senses and realized even we can't fiscally absorb this anymore. We got employees, we got shareholders, we want to keep. And another thing you need to do is take into consideration keeping your employees safe. Again, there are a lot of communities across the U.S. Businesses and people always try to make it a race thing. Again, it's a culture thing. And businesses don't care. I mean, businesses, I always tell people capitalism defeated racism decades ago, because businesses want to make the most amount of money. I mean, obviously, that's with the greatest amount of sales. If a store is profitable, they're going to keep it open. If it's losing money, if there's theft, if there is aggressive physical harm happening to your customers and your employees, you can't afford to do that. And you can't afford to let that happen. I would argue not just from a fiscal legal perspective in terms of lawsuits. I would argue you have a moral responsibility to protect your employees and your customers. And yet people wonder, why are these businesses leaving? Why are these grocery stores shutting down left and right? It's because I mean, especially as companies, the grocery stores, it's just, they can't take it anymore. They cannot afford to. Now, again, going to the comments, one of the first ones comes to us thanks to Paul Zazupa saying, quote, but I'm sure it'll work in New York City because the jihadists will be having their mayor first, right? Getting 690 likes. Arthur Eagleman says, quote, send it to the National Guard, getting 462 likes. Now, from a legal perspective, I don't think this will happen. I'm very skeptical to think this will ever happen in the United States, or granted, this state issue by state issue. Trump could solve this with an executive order. I don't think he would. I don't think he would. But I don't have this isn't a unique idea. I didn't think of this. But one thing you could do potentially to dramatically decrease crime in the United States would be to change the allowable use of force to have it to that you could defend your property with deadly force. Again, even Texas, you're not allowed to do that. And again, this is not legal advice either. To clarify, I'm not a lawyer, though I do own a suit. It's an instance where in Texas, again, which is a very pro-gun state, I would argue needs to be better, but nevertheless, you're only allowed to defend yourself with deadly force, aka pull out a firearm and stop the deadly threat if they are directly threatening you or your family. SB, basically, they're threatening to take your life away. That is where standard ground laws come into effect. That's where you can defend yourself. If someone is just trying to steal something from you and they don't pose a physical threat to your life, in Texas, with my understanding right now, you're not allowed to use deadly force. Other countries, other areas, you can. I do think if you want to dramatically decrease crime in the United States, you could change the law so that you could. Again, we'll see if this video gets taken off the YouTube. That's why you should always watch on Apple Podcasts, Rumble, or Spotify, or Spotify, as I like to, I think, funnily mispronounce. But again, if you were to change that legal standing, then these stores would have armed guards that could actually do more. They have armed guards. So again, they can only act like if you just take something off the shelf, they're not going to pull out a weapon and stop you. And again, another thing you do, change the legality around lawsuits and people getting hurt in stores. Even when I was a kid, I worked in a grocery store. I worked hard, but I wasn't very smart. I'll never forget, I felt like a failure, which I did fail. I accidentally forgot to, put a chicken in someone's bag, and I accidentally gave it to someone else when I was a bag boy. So, again, I made mistakes even back then. But it's an instance where even on my onboarding training in the 90s, that's, I think, 2000 era, but nevertheless, in onboarding training, they tell you specifically, do not stop people who you suspect of shoplifting because they were worried about lawsuits. They would rather the thief get away, which I would argue has made the whole situation worse, as retail theft in the United States is over $1 billion a year. It's huge. Again, those are a couple of things I think you could do to dramatically, not just decrease crime in the United States, but I would argue help with the culture in the United States and actually have more of a culture of accountability and decrease some of this theft. Because we're seeing this theft get worse and worse and worse. Now, you also have Dr. Shari saying, quote, I thought we already knew this. And they have a picture of a fully stocked store saying evil capitalism. Then below it says fair socialism. It's an empty store getting 888 likes. Which, yeah, but unfortunately, I don't think most kids in public schools read history books properly these days. You also have Song of the Sun saying, quote, yet another socialist experiment ended the exact same way as every other one ever has, getting 1.7 thousand likes. The Flag Guy says, quote, this is exactly what Zoran Mariami will bring to New York shitty. With a bunch of terrorists and R words as well. And I don't mean mentally challenged. And that got 1.2 thousand likes. You also have Freedom is Truth saying, quote, any private grocery store owner could have told them, quote, if you don't stop the theft, there won't be any store left. Perfect example of why the government run anything typically fails, getting 766 stores. You also have Jared Marsh saying, quote, Democrats run cities are fun. They have a picture of Hiroshima and Detroit from 1944, juxtapositioned with a picture of those cities in 2010. And yeah, Detroit went from pinnacle or a great, profitable, very great, clean city to, total hellhole. It says, the lesson is easier to come back from a nuclear strike than 5 decades of Democrat-controlled government, getting 1,000 likes. Let's see. Trying to see if there's any contrarian statements here. Let's see. A meme from Patrick saying, quote, they closed all the stores, so now you have to commute 40 miles to shoplift, getting 142 likes. Steve Renee says, quit raising thieves and you won't have this problem. It's not that complicated, getting 100 likes. Which, again, let's see here. I Love American News says socialism sucks, and there's a picture of a construction worker looking at a paycheck, looking confused. And it says, quote, me and my paycheck trying to figure out why the government worked half of my shift, or when the government, getting 335 likes. Golden Epoch says, what do you mean they ain't got no snacks? And it's Patrick Starr with the, what is it, the eye makeup or eyeliner or eyelashes, the big lips, and the fake nails getting 295 likes. And let's see here. Hino Hunter says, communism, follow me for more recipes. And it's just an empty plate getting 162 likes. So, again, it's one of those things where, yeah, that's a concern. I mean, it's concerning that New York wants to replicate this with their prospective new mayor, as Mr. Zoran Madiami has, I mean, a lot of polls have him in the lead, and he won the Democrat nominee, and it's a Democrat area, so odds are this will be coming to New York City soon. And again, $18 million wasted by the taxpayers on this store. Again, the only way these stores could possibly exist in these high theft areas would be to spend a disproportionate amount of their resource allocation on physical security. You have to have judges actually prosecute the law, or prosecute the criminals, and actually enforce the law, which again is a rare thing in some blue areas. And they keep complaining about, they wonder, why is this happening? Because the stores are losing money, the employees are getting physically hurt, the customers are getting physically hurt. It's just not viable. And again, it's also a government-run store. On top of all that, you also have the ineptitudes that come with hiring, not all, but some public sector employees, when it comes to, well, I can't but think the best apt metaphor for government employees is the DMV, or perhaps the U.S. Postal Service, which, yeah, not the hardest working folks out there. But unfortunately, I think this is just going to get worse and worse in terms of these food deserts being created, because, again, it's the toughest industry to be in, and they keep suffering these losses more and more. I think these grocery stores are just coming to the breaking point where they just can't take it anymore. And you're having a domino effect of, once one store did it, it kind of is one of those things where it was just okay to happen again. Because the first time it happened, again, Walmart got a lot of pushback in the press. Was it Q2 last year, I believe, when they shut down the stores in South Side Chicago, and they admitted, which give them credit to actually, saying the quiet part out loud, or being honest. They said, yeah, 17 years, we never made a profit out of these stores. We can't afford to anymore. And once they did that, other grocery stores go, you know what? The biggest protest happened. The biggest pushback happened. We're going to start closing down our least profitable stores as well. And with really no startups going into the grocery store industry, I don't see any of this anytime soon. But let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting political news, some good stuff. The EPA say that truck manufacturers can lay off the DEF limp mode as freedom comes back and Trump dismantles the EPA. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Caleb Jacobs at thedrive.com. And they say, quote, EPA tells truck makers to stop forcing immediate limp mode for low DEF. Trucks will no longer suddenly lose power when DEF levels get low. Lovely. Again, DEF, if you don't own a diesel truck, it's a useless, expensive liquid that you have to throw to the truck because the government puts a gun to your head and said, oh yeah, you must do this for the environment, which, well, in fact, government vehicles, they don't have any of this EPA crap on it. They last a lot longer, a lot more reliable. All this does is increase the cost of goods sold to the consumer, and not just increase the complexity of the vehicle, thereby increasing the cost, but also makes the vehicle less reliable. Talk to any diesel mechanic. I mean, I'm so happy about this because, again, it's getting to the point where, the deregulation, we're winning, baby. This is great. Again, diesel engines used to last 400,000 miles. They were more reliable than a freaking Honda Civic, which is saying something. They were damn near bulletproof. Then the government got involved. The EPA started cracking down, telling them they need to bolt on this crap and fill your car with this gunk or truck. Yeah, they became unreliable trash, relatively speaking. Went to having a car or truck that'll last 400,000 miles plus to like a third of that. And increase the cost every time you fuel up this stupid container. This is lovely. And again, they used to say, oh, you have to go into limp mode. Meaning your car won't go faster than 10 miles per hour or something like that. If you don't know what limp mode is. It also happens with certain C7 Corvettes, but another topic for another time. Perhaps that's because of engineering whoopsies, not the government in that case. Now, here you see a nice Cummins truck, it's a Dodge, but it's powered by those folks in Indiana with the Cummins engine there. Good old diesel. Unfortunately, they only make 2 pedals or automatic transmission trucks right now over at the Dodge Ram, but I partially digress. This isn't about that. Now they say, quote, the United States Environmental Protection Agency is on a roll when it comes to undoing past regulations and directions. Now, EPA Ambassador Lee Zeldin is urging truck and engine manufacturers to do away with the sudden speed and power losses due to low diesel exhaust fluid levels. In his announcement at the Iowa State Fair, a key event humming with agricultural workers who have long voiced their negative opinions of modern diesel emission systems, Zeldin called the software-imposed restrictions unacceptable and unnecessary. There certainly would have been a time to move such a There certainly would have been a time when such a move was surprising for the EPA, but under the Trump administration and they're conducting a face from its predecessor, an about face on its predecessors on environmental matters. It was Zeldin who, in less than 2 weeks ago, announced the agency's intentions to stop regulating greenhouse emissions. He claimed that as a victory for the industry, while the latest decision aims to champion everyday drivers and equipment operators. He continues, saying, quote, here you can see one of those stupid jugs you have to waste money on. Yeah, blue death fluid. God. Useless 2.5-gallon jugs you see everywhere. Now, he continues saying, quote, we have heard loud and clear from small businesses across the United States that the current DEF system is unacceptable. It is unacceptable that farmers, truckers, construction workers, and many other small businesses continually experience failures of diesel-powered equipment when they need it the most, costing millions of dollars in lost productivity. Today, we are responding to those concerns by calling it on manufacturers to take action to update their software and eliminate the unnecessary sudden loss of power and frustrating shutdowns that too many Americans have experienced, unquote. To explain it quickly, in case you're not familiar, most modern diesel engines rely on DEF for a process called selective catalyst reduction, or SCAR. This fluid, which is a solution made from urea and deionized water, is injected into the exhaust system to reduce nitrogen oxide emissions by as much as 99%. It's used on everything from heavy-duty trucks to semis, tractors, excavators, and so on and so forth. While DEF serves the clear purpose of improving emissions, many people malign it and everything that comes with it. The federal government estimates that hundreds of thousands of drivers have removed their trucks' emissions equipment altogether to avoid using DEF, which, not legal advice, but that is one way to make your truck a lot more efficient and a lot more reliable. But yeah, fun fact, legally speaking, if you only use a truck on your own land, you can do whatever you want. However, once you go onto the public road, that's where you can get tickets and you can get fines. Now, they continue saying, quote, citing, the federal government estimates that hundreds of thousands of drivers removed that altogether, avoiding it, citing major performance and reliability concerns. Such modifications have been the cause of major fines and penalties dished out to diesel aftermarket companies in recent years. In their part, manufacturers have made DEF a non-negotiable option of engine operation to meet restrictions put in place by past versions of the draconian EPA. Well, I added draconian part. Even though DEF-related limp mode was never mandated by the government, companies use the method to prevent people from running their vehicle and equipment without the solution. Again, another de facto crap thrust upon us because of the government. Very similar to the stupid invention that is the cylinder deactivation. Which again, you could argue is short-term good for the environment because it would decrease your energy's emissions. However, I always compare it to running and stopping every couple of seconds as opposed to just running. You put a lot more wear and tear on your engine with the cylinder deactivation crap. And yeah, let's just say if I've never bought a vehicle like that, although the Honda Civic Gen 11 SI has it, for $100 you can work around that with a plug-in so that every time you start the vehicle, you don't have to press the button to deactivate it, which talk about $1 million idea in terms of that bypass system. But I partially digress. Now, they say, quote, new EPA requirements taking effect into model year 2027 state that new diesel trucks for road use cannot be engineered to force sudden and severe power loss after running out of DEF. Now, we'll see who is in office after Donald Trump, but yeah, let's just say in 2027, buy your truck then. Additionally, the EPA says it's issuing new guidance that was, quote, developed with collaboration with manufacturers to make necessary software changes for trucks already in use. It's a sweeping move, then applying to both new and used trucks. And to be clear, the engine derating will start to be, and to be clear, engine derating will still be a part of this new strategy, but to a far lesser degree. Zeldin explained from an op-ed for the Des Moines Register that on heavy-duty semis, drivers will still be able to run for a full day with low DEF fluids before performance is restricted by slightly only 15%. Shouldn't be restricted at all. Now they say, quote, top speed, meanwhile, won't be limited for much longer. Only after about 4 weeks will the semis be limited to 25 miles per hour. Again, just get rid of this crap completely. It states a similar story with heavy-duty pickups, which will only be limited to 45 miles per hour after 4,000, 2,000 miles, or 80 hours with low DEF fluids. So some good news to our community. One of the first comments comes to us thanks to JLT saying, quote, "This is a good and sensible change. Getting instantly derated in the middle of nowhere with a loaded truck because you forgot to stock up on DEF jugs and nobody within 100 miles sells the stuff is infuriating, inconvenient at best, dangerous at worst. A grace period between running out and derating the engine may even prevent few frustrated, motivated DEF system deletes." Again, if I got a modern diesel truck, I wouldn't because they're all automatic transmissions. Yeah, that'd be the first thing I do is take that crap off. Let's see here. See if there are any more contrarian statements. BCD says, quote, "The military does not have emission equipment on their vehicles because it makes them unreliable," which, yeah, it also increases the maintenance cost and complexity. Let's see. Not too many contrarian statements. A lot of truckers in the comments section here. So some good news for more deregulation. Diesel trucks might actually be reliable again, which would be nice. But let me know, are you a fan of this deregulation? Do you think this will actually increase the sale of new trucks? Let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Going over to the business blunder of the day, you have Ford with yet another recall, this time 96 recalls in 2025 thus far. And this time, whoops, can't be fixed with software. Now this is brought to us thanks to Yahoo.com, which somehow is still in business. And Yahoo says, quote, "Ford recalls over 103,000 U.S. vehicles over damaged bolt axles." Whoops. Damaged axle bolts. There you can see the Ford logo. An inappropriately dirty, dilapidated Ford building. Okay, it's not that bad, but how are they still in business? Now they say, quote, "Ford is recalling more than 103,000 Ford F-150 pickup trucks in the U.S. over axle bolts that might break and result in the vehicle rolling away or loss of power while driving." This is according to the U.S. National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. The broken axle bolt can damage the axle hub splines, components that transfer the power from the axle to the wheels and help them rotate. Damaged splines can cause the vehicle to roll away when in park without the parking brake engaged or result in a loss of power, thereby increasing the risk of a crash. Whoops. The report said if the rear axle bolt becomes loose, customers may report a clicking noise. If the bolt breaks, they might hear a rattling noise, which, not really specific. I would argue that that's pretty much common with every Ford vehicle. How's that going to help them with the specific recall? Now, they say that this recall affects Ford F-150 models between the model years 2023 and 2025, and they do estimate that only 1% of those vehicles have the defect, which, how could this be possible? They have the best employees on the planet, the unions making these, the smartest engineers putting these, choosing the spec of these materials, only using the most highest of components, which I can't finish this. I can't finish that with a straight face. I mean, yeah, one of the first comments is Ronald saying, quote, "I knew a guy that used to be an inspector at the Ford plant. The job has been eliminated." I mean, I didn't even think that was a job to be good with at Ford. Again, 96 recalls in 2025, and we're more than halfway through the year, but not much. It's almost unfathomably bad. And again, this is an issue where this is hardware, baby. You can't just have this fixed with an over-the-air update. So that means if you got one of these vehicles, you got to drive to the Ford dealership, have them inspect it, and heaven forbid there's an issue, yours is one of the ones that is actually affected, that means you're going to have to maybe use the Uber. Maybe they'll give you a loaner vehicle, though if they do that, it'll probably be a Ford, so and the odds that you get home safe are, not 100%, I'll just say that much. And yeah, the Ford F-150, they're pissing away $5 billion a year on EVs. Gas engine F-150s is the most important thing they make because that's where the profit comes from. And yet, to not have the best quality assurance with the most profitable, important part of the company that's keeping you afloat and allowing you to make investments in things that you think is the future, gotta say, Ford, you, once again, are the business blunder of the day. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, try to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so click that button. Greatly appreciate it. Also, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, and comments. Great way to give me some additional feedback, letting me know how to make sure better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.